Today I'm Frey and I'm a science fiction and fantasy author. Today I will be reading to you from Wrestling with Gods, TESSERACTS 18, edited by Leanna Kersner and Jerome Stewart. Now I have to admit, when I was invited to submit a story to this anthology, I was torn. I mean, on one hand, it's TESSERACTS. It's the who's who of Canadian science fiction and fantasy. On the other, the theme was religion, and I'm not particularly religious. More than a religion, it had to be a story from the point of view of somebody inside the religion, and there had to be a struggle or a wrestle of some sort. There are so many stories and so many religions across the world of people wrestling with gods, either physically wrestling them or mentally or morally or psychically even. And that struggle between the mortal and the god had to be central to the plot of the short story we delivered. I dithered for a long time. I actually honestly thought about not even submitting something, and I had a hard time because I'm not particularly religious. I didn't know doctrine very well, and I didn't really feel like I wanted to celebrate any religion because while I have no problems with faith, I find, how is it put? The original book was great, but the fans are a little bit crazy sometimes. And that made me start thinking about books and how people really do turn their love of a writer or a story or a world that someone else has created into a kind of religion, a wonderful kind of religion, the sort where people share incredible creations with one another. And I realized that the bias that I had against religion was a little bit crap, and I needed to rethink that. But also I had a great basis for a religion based in fandom. And the next question was, well, how does a religion based in fandom come to be a real religion? And that's part of what I wanted to address in the moral of the story. So here we go. Her fingers brush the soft skin, the small smooth of bone underneath thin flesh behind my left ear, brushing back through wiry hair to where I've got it pulled back in preparation for hard work. Lake water, brackish here where it mingles with the St. Lawrence, slides down the side of my neck, summoning goosebump pimples in its wake. The slick, cool brush of membrane kisses the lobe of my ear, and I feel my eyes slide close involuntarily, as natural as the slight gasp that parts my lips, inflates my lungs, brushes the taste of water and breeze and sunlight across my tongue. "You came," the woman in the water says. Her voice is sibilant and filled with nearly inaudible clicks and hard palate burrs, an accent never before heard in the lower plains of Quebec. Never heard before the melt caused all the water levels to rise. Never heard before the Great Dark came and killed all the technology. Never before the Daniel Johnson Dam stopped working. The regulating of the Manicouagan became too much and the river broke through its cement prison. Never before Bay Commune was overborne and drowned. Possibly, perhaps, and I flatter myself a little, never before in the whole of human history. But then how could we have stories of things like her if I'm the first to converse with one? Arrogance is a sin. It's one of the sins that brought the Great Dark. "I came," I say, opening my eyes. Sunlight on water dazzles like diamonds. I squint. It's a comfortable gesture, the lines beside my eyes folding into his figure, nearly soothing. "How could I stay away?" "But did you come for me?" she teases, dipping into the water in a gesture I've learned is meant to be coy, flirtatious. Dark hair slips and pools along the surface, shifting and curling like squid ink. I sit back in the boat, take up my nets, and fling them over the side that she doesn't occupy. She whistles and clicks, face in the water, summoning fish. This is our deal. She fills my net, I fill her mind, and we neither of us attempts to harm the other. Actively. I had more hungry mouths to feed than fear of rumors, and that is what initially drove me out onto the unnatural lake. The stories said that there was something in the water that feeds on man flesh, but I am no man and we needed the fish. For the first few weeks, it was subtle. An elongated shadow too far down to see clearly, too solid to be a school, but too large to be any breed of fish I ever caught before. Sometimes it was a splash on the surface of the otherwise calm lake. Once, my little rowboat lurched under my feet against current, violent, wrong. I was being hunted, I realized. Even as I harvested fish, something else sought to harvest me. The rumors were not just stories. I stayed away for 3 days. On the 4th, my youngest brother patted his stomach morosely and cried, unable to understand why he hungered so. Defeated by his tiny misery, I fetched my father's harpoon from the hunting shed and made the short walk back to the rocky shoreline. My little boat was tied up where I had left it, undisturbed, but no, see, there were 4 long scratches in the wood of the stern, naked against the dark stain of tar sealant, brackish water, and age. I bent down, breath caught in the hollow of my throat, and splayed my palm against the slashes. They were finger-width apart from each other, come from a humanish hand. There was a creature in the lake, and it was mad at me. Mad because I dared to fish, or mad because I did not come back. I nearly turned away then and abandoned the boat and the lake and went out to find another way to contribute to the supper table. I am old enough to go to the steam-driven factories now, but then who would care for the littles? I could spare a few hours each day to go on to the lake, but I cannot leave them for 8 or more hours each day to work and then shop. My parents would be furious, and I cannot hunt. I have no skill with a bow and arrow. We have no gun, and ammunition is too expensive, and the mayor creature has not given us express permission. That is courting disaster. No choice. I had to go back onto the lake. I hesitated, but I could still hear the little one's frustrated wails ringing in my ears, so I gathered up and solidified my courage. Die of hunger, or die on the water. Those were my only 2 choices. I have been longing to lay my hands again on rangy muscles and endless lucent skin, to clap eyes on the soft bob of white breasts half hidden by the sun sparkling on rippling water. It looks as if someone had thrown 1,000 million little dimes into the water, and that they are flipping and flirting with the sky every time the breeze sends a playful ripple along the skin. I have dreamt of her, and I don't know what that means beyond that I have, perhaps, become irrevocably ensnared. Knowing such will not loosen the bonds, though. I lean further into her touch, rest against the side of the boat so that my head and shoulders are over the water, dip my fingers into the golden gilt. I expect it to be warm, but the lake water is cold, always cold. Warm enough for swimming in the summer if one were to dare it, but frigid enough come autumn to cause someone unlucky enough to take a dip to freeze to death, even as they made it back to dry land. Come swim, she says, coy and enticing. It is the top of summer now, and the lake is as comfortable for a human as it is ever going to be. I was sure, the first time I finally saw more than just a shadow under the water, that I was as good as dead. Scaled arms would reach into my boat and capsize me, that maybe there were tentacles with which I'd be throttled before I could drown, that maybe I would die bubble screaming at the teeth of a she-shark, rather than with a lung full of water. What I cannot have anticipated was the way a wet book flopped up onto my deck. It flapped open like a gasping fish, splayed on the illustration of a golden-haired princess half running, and the paper weak with the weight of decades of water. Hans Christian Andersen, the spine read when I had nudged it with the butt of my spear. I'd never heard of such an author. This might have been one of the forbidden books, the ones about the creatures that the great dark exposed to the world. We weren't allowed to read these books. They told lies about the creatures. The she-thing lifted its head from the water, peered at me with eyes shuttered behind transparent eyelids, watched me as I watched it and watched the book. Eventually, when I made no move to speak to it, and I feared how quickly it could retaliate should I heft my harpoon, the horizontal slits peeled back, and she regarded me with a startlingly human gaze. I have seen humans telling stories from these, the she-monster said, and those were her first words to me. Teach me to tell stories.